The COVID-19 pandemic is one of many events that has had negative impacts on the global oil markets, which has further exposed the fragility and vulnerability of the Nigerian economy. This has since motivated the federal government in recent years to intensify its efforts of diversifying the Nigerian economy away from crude oil, which currently makes up more than 90% of its revenue. And one of such efforts is revamping the mining sector in order to attract foreign investment, increase government revenue, and hopefully boost the economy. But this will come at an additional cost. A cost that will not only impact negatively on the global climate, but also on the environment and the local communities that would potentially host some of these mining operations. The question now is, can Nigeria successfully pursue its mining ambition for economic growth in a sustainable and responsible way with minimal impact on local host communities, the environment, and the climate? And the answer to that question may not be so far-fetched. From the 1900s all the way to the 1960s, the mining sector in Nigeria was a booming industry. The years between 1904 and 1909 marked the commencement of mining in the country as the defunct Royal Niger Company mined tin ore in Jos and coal in Enugu. Soon after, in 1927, a railway line was constructed connecting Jos, Enugu and Port Harcourt, which made it easier to transport and export raw minerals out of Nigeria. This sparked off the boom in the mining sector, making Nigeria a major exporter of coal, tin and columbite. However, the discovery of crude oil in 1956 and the start of a civil war in 1967 caused a major disruption in the mining sector, leading to a decline in the industry with the shutting down of mines and the evacuation of foreign experts. Since then, for decades, the sector has suffered neglect from the Nigerian government, though pockets of unregulated small-scale and artisanal mining activities continued in a few communities, which is reported to have devastating environmental and health impacts. But all that may soon change as the government starts to reprioritize the development of the mining sector as part of its drive to diversify its economy away from crude oil. Nigeria's ambition to boost its economy through mining comes at a critical era when global debates are dominated by discussions on how to mitigate the impact of climate change. Mining, being an energy-intensive operation, has long been a major contributor to global greenhouse gas, emitting about 1 gigaton of CO2 in 2015, representing approximately 2% of global total emissions, and Nigeria signing up to the 2015 Paris Agreement with a commitment to lower its greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20% makes its mining ambition a bit more complicated. Nevertheless, in 2018, the Nigerian government launched a roadmap to develop its mining sector, which prioritized 7 minerals for mining, among which includes coal, one of the highest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. Analysts have shown that Nigeria would definitely not meet its emission target if it develops its coal potential. Apart from its apparent impact on the climate, mining activities are also known for their destructive impact on the environment, with damaging consequences to host communities, which are already being felt in several existing mining locations across the country. The risks mining activities pose to the climate and local host communities are well-known facts that are widely acknowledged within the sector. Therefore, efforts are being made to address these risks by providing regulatory frameworks to guide mining activities across the globe. This is important because even though the mining industry contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, studies show that the industry is still very central to the growth of clean energy technologies, which is key to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and keeping global average temperature rise below 2 degrees. According to a 2017 World Bank report, the production of graphite, lithium and cobalt alone would increase by nearly 500% by 2050, and over 3 billion tons of minerals and metals including aluminium, zinc and copper will be needed to deploy wind, solar, geothermal power and energy storage towards a clean energy transition. This is one of the reasons the mining industry has been under pressure from the international community to adopt climate-smart mining approaches that ensure its operations are more climate resilient and environmentally responsible. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, mining regulations have not been robust enough to address its apparent impact on the climate, environment, and host communities. At times, some of these regulations lack clear definitions or proper interpretations of terms. Take, for example, Nigeria's National Environmental Regulation of 2009, a piece of legislation responsible for regulating the mining and processing of industrial minerals of the country. Under Part 1, Section 2, Subsection 1 of the regulation, it states that new development in the mining and processing techniques shall apply up-to-date, efficient, cleaner production technologies to minimize pollution to the highest degree practicable. Section 3, Subsection 1 of the same part of the regulation further states that every facility shall adopt cleaner production processes and pollution prevention measures that will yield both economic and environmental benefits. The regulation fails to provide clear definitions to terms like up-to-date, cleaner production processes, pollution prevention measures. A proper definition of these terms would have been instrumental in strengthening mining regulations in Nigeria, thereby making them less vulnerable to abuse. Furthermore, an analytical review of Nigeria's environmental impact assessment guidelines revealed that it places very little relevance on the impact of projects on people, particularly local host communities who are most vulnerable to mining operations. This is the reason why most EIA reports are predominantly framed as projects only having impacts on the physical environment and wildlife, with very little emphasis on the actual people whose livelihood might be adversely impacted by mining activities. These are just a few examples that show the inadequacies of Nigeria's mining and environmental regulations, which have encouraged mining companies in the country to have very little interest in mitigating the impact of their activities on the environment and local host communities. Apart from reviewing Nigeria's regulations and institutional processes to address environmental and social impacts of mining activities, climate change is still a very important factor to consider as Nigeria pursues its mining ambition. Therefore, mainstreaming climate change within Nigeria's environmental and mining regulatory frameworks is key to ensuring that the sector remains climate compliant with an adequate reduction of its carbon footprint. One way to achieve this is a mandatory climate change vulnerability assessment as part of an EIA process to help identify climate risks with possible adaptation or mitigation measures. Nigeria should also adopt within its mining laws the 4 building blocks of climate-smart mining, identified by the World Bank as a way of achieving a healthy balance between the economic need for continued mining and achieving sustainable development with a minimal negative impact on the climate and host communities. Although it is important for the Nigerian government to continue looking for opportunities to develop its mining potentials for economic gains, it must also strongly consider the consequences of mining operations, and discussions on how to mitigate potential impacts must be encouraged and followed through with adequate climate and people-compliant policies.